Opportunities in the Marketplace by Victor Yap and Doris Mock. Chapter 17. Nehemiah. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Nehemiah chapter 4. I went into a small post office in Pasadena that had only 2 workers on duty. Taped to the side of the sales window was a smiley face minus the smile. In its place was a glum, flat, expressionless line of a smile with words on top of the round face that read, "I can only please one person at a day, and today ain't your day." At the bottom of the full-sized paper was a message in parentheses, "Tomorrow ain't looking too good either." Mark Galli tells this story about Francis of Assisi, who had commanded his friars not to touch money. One day a worshipper left a coin offering in the church, and one of the friars, for whatever reason, saw the money and immediately tossed it over a window sill. When Francis learned he had touched money, Francis rebuked him, commanded him to use his lips to pick up the coin and place the coin in a pile of ass's dung with his lips. Some people have the mistaken notion that a Christian should be nothing but sweet, mild, and nice. Nice guys do not have to finish last. They do not have to be like doormats, wallflower, or tofu. In Nehemiah chapter 4, Sanballat and Tobiah, the Ammonite official of chapter 2 verse 19, returned with more trouble. This time, Sanballat laughed at the Jews in their face and ridiculed their rebuilding project before it reached the halfway stage, returning later, 6:1, with more trouble than the wall was near completion. Israel's enemies labeled them feeble, called the city a dump, and described their work as inferior. Even a fox can break it. Verse 3. How did Nehemiah respond? Nehemiah was still nice, but never to a fault. He never allowed people to walk all over him, and he did not back down when he and others with him were at risk, in danger, or being threatened. Note also that Nehemiah did not pick a fight, worsen the situation, or start a shouting match. He immediately brought the matter before God, quickly organized the Israelites to take action, and aggressively overcame the threat of their enemies. What healthy, active, and positive steps can we take to discourage others from taking advantage of us, our faith, and our politeness? How do counter-bullying with wisdom? Why is meekness a strength and not a weakness? First, dignify yourself and defer to God. Nehemiah 4, 1-5. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble burned as they are?" Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What they are building, if even a fox climbed up on it, he would break down their wall of stones. Hear us, O our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders." A company sent me a Christmas catalog one year, and in it was an old Gaelic blessing plague that humored me. It says, "May those who love us, and those who don't love us, may God turn their hearts. And if he doesn't turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles, so we'll know them by their limping." The Jews have their prayers for those who opposed them too. May all your teeth fall out but one, and may that one ache. May you win the lottery and spend it all on hospital charges. May you sell candles for a living, and then may the sun never set. May you be like a chandelier, hang by day and burn by night. May you become world famous in medical records. Nehemiah's prayer, verse 4, when he was disrespected and despised, was not nice. It was controversial but candid. Before you agree or disagree with Nehemiah's prayer, consider the facts. He was not on the offensive, but on the defensive. He did not request insults on his enemies, but returned insults to their owners. He did not ask for himself, but for people whose lives were endangered, and he did not say it to his enemies, but made it known to God. Note that the words greatly incensed, verse 1, feeble, verse 2, and despised, verse 4, occur for the first time and the only time in the Bible. The enemies used a rare word, feeble, to describe the Jews in verse 2. It means scrawny, sick, and spineless. Nehemiah dignified himself by bringing his prayer before God. When he was provoked, despised, and insulted, he requested God to be his defender, aggressor, and vindicator. Nehemiah did not mince, sanitize, or regret his words. He told it as it was. The verbs hear, turn, and give are powerful and passionate and imperatives. The Jews were being despised. Verse 4, another one-time word in the Bible. Nehemiah complained that the Jews were held in utter contempt, blatant disregard, and verbal scorn. He asked God to return the favor on his enemy's head, to reverse the roles of the hunter with the hunted, and to make the enemies a victim of their own violence. Serving the Lord is never easy. Critics, troublemakers, and fault-finders make it their business to rub people in the face, to force their opinions on others, and to impose their expectations on others. Pour your heart out to God and tell him your difficulty, distress, or dissatisfaction. You do not need to accept bad treatment from others. Deny it is not there or take it into their own hands. Bottling up on our own feelings is never any good. Excusing our enemies is not honest. Second, defend yourself and discourage your enemies. Nehemiah 4, 6-15. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to our God and posted the guard day and night to meet this threat. Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, "The strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall." Also our enemies said, "Before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put an end to the work." Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, "Wherever you turn, they will attack us." Therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, "Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes." When our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to his own work. An old Indian legend tells about a vicious snake that terrorized everyone in the neighborhood until the day he met a wandering holy man. Naturally, the snake could not hurt a holy man, and the meeting wound up with the snake listening to a stiff lecture on being nice to people. The holy man left after the snake promised not to bite anybody. The snake kept its promise, though its patience was sorely tried. His neighbors thought he was being good because he had grown too old to fight, and they threw rocks at him. By the time the holy man visited him again, the snake was looking pretty seedy or worn out. "You and your wise ideas and moral teachings," he said. "My friend," said the holy man, "I told you not to bite anybody, but I did not forbid you to hiss at them." It's been said, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. The next time Sanballat and Tobiah returned, they recruited the Arabs, the Ammonites, and men from Ashdod to fight the Jews. Verse 7. When they heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. Verse 7. From greatly incensed, verse 1, they became very angry. Verse 7. The superlatives did not end. The Jews were scared out of their wits. Previously, Sanballat alone was angry, verse 1. Now the joint force was very angry, verse 7. Previously, Nehemiah prayed by himself, 1 verse 4, 1 verse 6, and 2 verse 4. Now the Jews prayed with him, 4 verse 4. Same Hebrew word. Nehemiah prayed again, but he also took action. He posted a guard day and night to meet the threat, verse 9. When the threat sounded deadly, the Jews came to Nehemiah more than 10 times, 4 verse 12, repeated the same words, bringing panic, disorder, and nervousness to the camp. Nehemiah could not ignore the threat against their lives. He fortified the exposed areas, verse 13, armed families with swords, spears, and bows, posted them to guard the wall, and rallied them with a Winston Churchill-type speech, "Fight for your brothers, sons, daughters, wives, and homes," verse 14. The verbs remember and fight, verse 14, are again forceful and feisty imperatives. Fighting is always the last resort and never the first instinct. It is not an offensive but a defensive move. It is about being vigilant and not being militant. It seems extreme to fight, but extreme times call for extreme measures. Sometimes you have to send your enemies a "don't mess with us" message, discourage them from getting wrong ideas, letting them share the worry. As a conflicted man whose views on war waver once moaned, "I'm 51% for the war and 49% against it." The purpose Nehemiah ordered the Jews to be prepared to fight was not to claim a prize, a hostage, a scalp, or a turf, but to claim a psychological advantage over the enemies and to secure a physical distance from them. God-fearing people fight to combat evil, overturn wrongs, and to seek justice. Their enemies retreated when they discovered that the Jews were not unproven, untrained, or unwilling fighters. One last warning about fighting. Even though Nehemiah challenged his people to fight for their brothers, sons, daughters, wives, and homes, 4 verse 14, he did not tell them to fight for God, 4 verse 20. This is to prevent a descent into the madness of religious wars. As security experts warned, if no one is at home, if a house has no alarm, and if you do not own a dog, it is wise to put up a "Beware of dog." Trespassers will be prosecuted or protected by alarm company sign. I remember seeing a crocodile farm warning sign in an old James Bond movie, "Trespassers will be eaten." Third, discipline yourself and depend on one another. Nehemiah 4, 16-23. From that day on, half of my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building the wall. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other, and each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. But the man who sounded the trumpet stayed with me. Then I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, "The work is extensive and spread out, and we are widely separated from each other along the wall. Wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us there. Our God will fight for us." So we continued the work with half the men holding spears from the first light of dawn till the stars came out. At that time I also said to the people, "Have every man and his helpers stay inside Jerusalem at night, so they can serve us as guards by night and workmen by day." Neither I nor my brothers, nor my men, nor the guards with me took off our clothes. Each had his weapon, even when we went for water. I saw this full-scale office timetable sidewalk board on the internet. 9 a.m. starting time. 9:15 a.m. arrive at work. 10 a.m. coffee break. 11 a.m. check email. 11:30 a.m. prepare for lunch. 12 p.m. lunch. 2 p.m. browse the internet. 3 p.m. tea break. 3:30 p.m. check email again. 4 p.m. prepare to go home. 4:45 p.m. go home. 5 p.m. finishing time. Howard Hendricks said, Disciplined people are the people who can do what needs to be done when it need to be done. Discipline is not the addition of a skill or attitude when circumstances change and things threaten. It is present, available, and developed before something happens. Our inventiveness, intelligence, and improvisation can only get us so far without initiative, industriousness, and intensity. Discipline is not denying oneself of necessities for the sheer act of deprivation. It is freeing oneself of encumbrances for the necessary advantage of preservation. Amazingly, from verse 16, the Jews disciplined themselves even when the threat was gone, when the enemies were quiet, and when the victory was won. The way they disciplined themselves were fascinating. Half the men worked and the other half guarded. Verse 16. The working half labored with one hand and were armed with the other. Verse 17. And everyone was on the alert from sunrise till sunset. Verse 21. And overnight. Verse 22. The people depended on one another to respond if anyone was under attack. Their discipline was eye-opening. They worked day, night, and after dark. Verse 22. They never took their clothes, pants, or boots off. Verse 23. And they carried different instruments, spears, shields, bows, and armor for Nehemiah's men. Verse 16. Weapon for those carrying materials. Verse 17. And sword for the builders. Verse 18. Their discipline of time, lifestyle, and skill were sorely tested. Of course, they could not live like that forever. They just had to discipline themselves until the task was completed. Depend on one another, for two is better than one, and there is strength in unity. Conclusion. Are you allowing others to put you down, make you lose heart, or think God has let you down? Are you holding your head high, praying honestly, strongly, and earnestly to God? Do you protect yourself and make your enemies think twice before they act funny, try anything foolish, or pick on you? Look out for one another. Work or guard or pray. If you are not repairing the wall, you should hold a weapon or sound the trumpet. Isn't it time for passivity to take a back seat in your life and assertion to occupy the driver's seat? Bible study questions. Background. Nehemiah's background. After Judah's exile, Jerusalem was desolate. Nehemiah wept, fasted, and prayed to God. Chapter 1. Nehemiah, the cupbearer of the king of Assyria, asked the king for permission to rebuild Jerusalem and received his blessing. Chapter 2. The division of labor in the reconstruction of the city wall. 3 chapters. 1. List the enemies of Judah. Who? Refer to verse 10 and 19. What were their emotional reactions? Why? How did they mock Judah? Verses 1 to 3. 2. Examine the prayers of Nehemiah and the people. 4 to 5. A. To God. B. For themselves. C. To the enemy. Make them, or do not. D. Reason. 3. List the actions and responses of both parties. Nehemiah and Judah. What actions did Nehemiah and Judah take after praying? Verse 6. The enemies. Describe the further actions of the enemies. Verses 7 to 8. Judah's response. Verses 9 to 10. The enemy's strategy. Verse 11. Nehemiah's strategy. Verses 12 to 14. The enemy's reaction. Verse 15. The ongoing strategy of Nehemiah and Judah. Verses 15 to 23. Summarize the strategy of Nehemiah and Judah. Summarize the strategies of the enemies. 4. Closing. The results of their work. Nehemiah 6, 15 to 16. 5. Discuss how Nehemiah and Judah were united. A. Describe their attitude and actions towards God. B. Describe their attitudes and actions towards the enemy. C. Describe their attitudes and actions towards each other. 6. Discuss Nehemiah's role as a leader. 7. Discuss the roles of other leaders or ordinary person. 8. How has this lesson helped you as a disciple of Christ to understand your role, identity, participation, influence, and relationship with others in the marketplace? Group sharing. 1. What's the main difference between healthy competition and vicious competition in the workplace? Discuss different line of work. 2. What enemies do you or your team or your organization have? What is their goal? What are their strategies? 3. How do you or your team or your organization face the enemy? How do you work together? What strategy do you have to face? 4. What are the elements in building group cohesion? What are the similarities and differences between worldly and spiritual teams? 5. Who is our enemy in the church or ministries? How do we pray? Is it similar to Nehemiah's? How does our team build unity? What strategy do we have to face the enemy? What teaching or suggestion does this passage have for us? Personal application. 1. Are you generally a person who works in a team in the workplace? Are you a leader who can unite others? What personal improvement do you seek? 2. Do you often bring the difficulties, tests, and enemies you encountered in the workplace to God in prayer? How is your prayer life? What reminder does this passage give to you? What progress do you hope to make? 3. Analyze the challenges your team faces. What methods do you have to strengthen the cohesion of the team?